Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
Outside the window, it was late fall. Heavy clouds floated over the city, and it seemed like an endless stream. A fine rain fell, half with prickly snowdrops, hitting the glass, bleeding in small trickles downward. Trees were leafless, elderly flowers in the beds and puddles on the paths. It was all depressing, sad, and wistful. For 17 years, now Kate has watched the same picture outside her window at the same time of year, the same window and the most native sill. How many tears have you cried on it? A girl cannot measure, nor can you measure the heartache she has felt all these years. It is at this time of the year, October 31st. Today is her birthday. It is for others such an event as a holiday. But for Kate, it is another occasion to realize that she is alone in this world. Since Kate was born in an orphanage, she didn't know her parents. The caretakers said only that they found her on the doorstep of the district hospital. There were no documents. Doctors determined that most likely Kate was born at home, but the negligent mother never managed to find a name, and the girl was given by the head doctor of the hospital. And the patronymic was given in honor of the guard, who, going around the territory, noticed the package at the back entrance. And the surname was given Saturday, exactly on this day found the baby. That's how she became Kate Saturday. It was kind of beautiful. Kate was healthy for her age, but luck turned away from the girl right after she was found in the brain. Fall evening. Kate was never adopted. No, lots of times prospective parents came by, looked at the kids. But for some reason Kate was always unlucky. The color of her eyes didn't match, or she didn't like the thin pigtails, or the girl needed a boy. And Kate dreamed of having a family, of having a mommy and a daddy. She'd have a mommy and a daddy to read bedtime stories to. And on weekends, they'd all go on a picnic together. And to have a fluffy, playful dog, but not fluffy and not a dog. A cat would be good too. Even a fish in an aquarium would be great. But none of that happened. The guardians chose, and they only looked at Kate in passing. It didn't appeal to anyone. For another 10 years, she hoped for a miracle. And by the time she was 14, she realized she'd never have a mom and dad, a cat and a dog and a fish. But every birthday, she would definitely put on the windowsill, look at the street, and think here she will come out of here and everything in her life will be. Otherwise, she would be able to start her family. She will have children who will be the happiest in the world. And it doesn't matter what the weather is like outside the window, because mom will be there. And their birthdays will be filled with only positive emotions. And there will be a huge cake and candles and a lot of friends. No, at Kate's orphanage, they wished her a happy birthday. Even the cook baked a cake with apples. But it was all so mundane, so routine. And the headmistress, Lucy, even gave a small gift, most of the time a book of some kind. It's nice, of course, but I don't have a heart. Where are you hiding? Kate heard Jake's voice. They'd been friends for about 10 years, ever since he'd been brought to the orphanage by the cat's mother. Skinny scared. He couldn't get enough and hid bread under his pillow. And Kate used to give him his portion, then a cookie, then that bread, and even a cutlet. Then the teachers noticed and scolded him. You can't eat so much. But Kate still secretly fed Jake. Then he got used to it, got full, finally calmed down. And over the years, it was not Kate, but he helped her and protected her from abusers and helped her with math. They were in the same class at the same desk, even sat together, and they came home from school together. The most true and loyal friend, Kate knew all his sad story. It turns out that Jake still had a brother he didn't remember. He was taken from his mother when Jake was first born, and he never knew where that boy was. He was adopted by some couple. That was the end of the story, and the mother never visited Jake at the orphanage. But over the years, he'd weaned himself from even thinking about her. Jake, like Kate, was alone in the world. This evening, he knew where Kate was. Sitting on her window in the laundry room again. Such a haven where the girl poured out all her tears and worries. Jake climbed up on the windowsill beside her. Then he realized and reached into his pocket. Happy birthday to Kate, Jake smiled, and wrinkled his nose at his fifth nose funny. Do you like it? He held out his hand and held it out expectantly, glanced at the girl. In his palm lay a simple ring. Was it silver? Kate gasped. Jake, where did you get it? Did you steal it? Why would I steal it? The guy was offended. I just cut off the tag so you wouldn't see the price tag on the gift box. Sorry, I didn't have enough. Where'd you get the money? No, you guys at the orphanage gave it to me for small expenses. But you had to save up for a year to buy even a silver ring. I earned it, Katya. I got a special job so I could give you something for your birthday. What do you like? I think I got the right size. Kate remembered that a month ago Jake started running away for 3 hours in the evenings. There was a market near the orphanage. The kid had a job picking fruit for a vendor there. The old Asian guy took pity on the kid and gave him a job. But it was all unofficial. The teachers didn't know. Oh, Kate was silent, but she thought Jake was doing it for himself, and it turned out he was earning her a present. The girl put the ring on just right. Goodbye, she smiled. Thank you, Jake. So unexpected and so nice. You just hide it from the teachers and the girls. Or else ban who? Jake advised. Sure enough, she nodded back. And then, unexpectedly, she poked him on the cheek. Jake looked at her in surprise, then blushed. So his freckles were gone too. Blushed. Kate glared. Jake, what are you? Stupid? Jake muttered. Snapped out of his seat and ran off. And Kate sat and smiled. And even the brainy weather outside the window couldn't spoil her mood. For the first time in her life, she'd been given real jewelry. It wasn't duty chocolates or another book, a real adult gift, and the fact that Jake had called her names was nothing. Kate knew Jake had a temper. He'd always say something out of confusion and then apologize. That's what happened this time. After about 10 minutes, Jake came back. Katya, I'm sorry, I'm a fool myself, he said. I forgive you. She smiled and patted the windowsill next to her. Jake jumped in again next to her, and they were already sitting together, talking about all sorts of things. If the teachers on duty hadn't dispersed them, they would have stayed up all night. At the girls' room, Jake, when the teacher turned away, suddenly kissed Kate on the cheek. Now it was her turn to be proud. She silently kicked out into the room, and then, falling asleep, remembered that timid Jake's kiss and gently stroked the ring. Really? That's how love begins. A week passed after those timid kisses. For some reason, Kate and Jake felt awkward in front of each other. They'd been friends for so many years. They'd sat at the same desk together at school, gone back to the orphanage together. But they tried not to talk about that night on the windowsill. Kate hid the ring among her things and kept it as the apple of her eye, and sometimes secretly took it out, admiring it and smiling. But one day, Kelly's roommate noticed Kate twirling something in her hands. It was late in the evening. The desk lamp was on in the room. Kate thought everyone was asleep, lying on the bed, twirling the ring in her hand. She flinched when she heard the Swedish woman's voice. Let me see what you got there. Nothing. Kate mumbled and wanted to turn away from the wall, clutching the jewelry in her hand. But Kelly grabbed her arm tightly. A little scuffle ensued. At the noise, the teacher on duty came running and the lights flashed. And then Kelly squeezed Kate's hand so painfully that her palm clenched involuntarily and the ring rolled to the teacher's feet. Where did you get that? Wendy frowned. It's mine. Kate replied defiantly. It was given to me. Do you know what kind of gift you stole? Admit it. Out of spite. Tears came to Kate's eyes. She'd never taken anything from anyone in her life. She couldn't make such an accusation against Jake. Otherwise, the question would arise as to where he'd gotten the money from. And then Jake would lose his small income, and he could be charged with theft. The superintendent will talk to you in the morning. Now everybody go to bed. The teacher bellowed, and left. Turned out the light. Kate lay awake for a long time. Listened to the judgmental murmurs of the neighbors, not Dashka, and Tanks. She did not have a trusting relationship. She only had one friend, Jake, but she couldn't give him away. In the morning, which was a day off, the whole orphanage knew about the night's incidents. The headmistress flew in mad as a fury. Not only was she pulled out to work on Sunday again, but she had to deal with the theft. And who? Kate, the quiet one. But as soon as Lucy walked into the office, Jake came in, What do you want? The superintendent asked irritably. It's not Kate's fault, Jake told her, and closed the door tightly behind him. He confessed everything to Galina Vladimirovna about the work at the market and the gift. So you leave the shelter unauthorized twice a week. The headmistress shook her head. How so? And the caretakers are watchmen. And I go through the window to the laundry room and come back the same way, Jake admitted. And who opens the window for you? Jake lowered his eyes. Could he give Kate away? Jake do that. The superintendent guessed. Here's a couple of Jakes. Be honest. Did you get the ring? I didn't steal it. I earned it. The guy resented it. Easy, easy, don't yell. I believe you, but let's make a deal. No more moonlighting. Otherwise, I'll complain to the trader for using child labor illegally, and no more leaving the orphanage grounds without my knowledge or that of the staff until school is over. You're my responsibility. So no more trips to the market. But you're saying what about your extra income? You're gonna have to be patient, honey. Soon you'll be out of school, you'll be a free bird. All right, go get Saturday for me. Lucy was a wise teacher. She understood that you and Kate were not just friendship, but first love. And you had to be very careful not to hurt either of them. Jake looked into Kate's room. She was lying on the bed with her back turned to the wall. The roommates looked at Jake, giggling. But he didn't react to their laughter in any way. Kate, Lucy's calling for you. He called out to the girl. Kate turned, jumping up to him. Why did you go to see her? She whispered. Why, Kate? Was it necessary? Did you really think I'd keep quiet when you were accused of something you didn't know? And now what? Lucy, you're a cool chick. I've seen that again, Jake winked at her. When Kate came into the office, Lucy was sitting at her desk, looking at the ring. You're the one with the thin fingers, she said with a surprised smile when she saw Kate. How Jake had guessed, and he then confessed that he had calculated from Gianna's palm and the notebook, she announced. And he'd measured the width of his finger and calculated it somehow. It's a good one. He's a guy, Lucy smiled again. Appreciates it, and also Kate, keeping his head up. I realize you're young, first love, and all that, but take your time. What are you talking about, Lucy? We haven't even kissed. Kate blushed. That's a shame. The superintendent laughed. But again, keep your head up. Here's your jewelry. And she handed the girl a ring. Thank you, Kate mumbled and ran out of the office. Jake was waiting for her outside the office. How's it going? He asked. Did she scold you? No, she gave me the ring back. They looked at each other and laughed. What were they so afraid of? Monday, coming back from school, Jake finally dared and kissed Kate on the lips. She responded, and they didn't hide their feelings anymore. The feelings were still a little childish, naive, but that's what makes it so beautiful. First love. They didn't notice. It was the end of high school. After graduation, they sat on the riverbank, embraced and dreamed. Jake dreamed of going to a military school, but he realized that he had little chance, so he decided to go to the army. And then from there, he would try to become a cadet. Jake's plans worried the boiler, but she supported him, realizing that if he decided so, then so be it. You serve and take care of yourself, she said. And I will wait for you. Even if I have to wait for a long time, he asked with a sad smile. As long as necessary, as long as I will wait. Time will pass quickly. I'm sure it won't. Jake replied thoughtfully. You study too. Education is necessary. Kate nodded in agreement. She had her sights set on teacher training college. She dreamed of being a kindergarten teacher, herself deprived of parental love. She wanted to work with little ones, felt she could do it. When I become a cadre military, you will travel with me to garrisons, Jake asked me jokingly. I will, she promised. So they parted, promising to be together again in the future. Kate went to teachers' college in the same city, and Jake was drafted into the Army. Right after the exams, Jake joined the Air Force. Kate was very proud of her fiancé, and she already considered herself his fiancée serves in the elite of military troops. And then there was another mess on Africa. For a while, Jake was still a bit of a presence. I heard from him rarely, but then he suddenly went silent. Kate waited a month, 2, 3, and then went to the military enlistment office. That's how Jake Sidorenko died. They told her at the military enlistment office. Hearing this, the regiment woke up under Kate's feet. How why? She shouted. Why wasn't I told? Who is she, Jake? Nobody. He had no relatives. He was buried somewhere out there in Africa. Kate was told the exact place of burial. How could she go there? It was still a turbulent time, and the orphan had no money to travel. All Kate had left with Jake was that silver ring, and a memory, the memory of pure first love. 5 years later, Kate graduated from Teachers College. She got a job in one of the city kindergartens. The girl received a small room in a dormitory from the state. In it, they arranged their everyday life. The kindergarten is a room like everything else in the girl's life. Kate loved her work, adored the little ones, and they felt her kind hearts yearned for her. The kids were happy to rush to the garden in the morning, knowing that Kate was waiting for them there. She learned skits and dances with them, and told them many interesting things. And how did Kate read fairy tales? You can listen to her. The kids did not need any cartoons, only if the teacher would tell them fairy tales. Kate also skillfully found an approach to each child. For example, Daniel was a born artist. Not only did he draw all the sheets given to him, but he would steal them from his neighbor. And then on the wall, something on the little boy was constantly scolded by another teacher. Kate found a way out of it. She hung a big cotton sheet on the wall in the playroom. What's not a canvas? You can paint on it. Daniel loved the idea. The walls in the playroom were now in order. Just make sure you change the absorbent cotton on time. Julia loved animals. Once she brought a kitten to the group without noticing it. Her mom was confused in the morning. The girl carried it in her purse. What to do with the kitten? We can't throw it out on the street. Although the headmistress was in favor of that option, Kate made a more humane kitten a house out of a box. And while Julia's mom went to the daycare center to get the animal, the whole group listened with interest to Kate's story about the cat family. In the end, everyone was happy and satisfied. There was a very modest girl, Daria, in the group. Kate saw that she wanted to read poems and perform at festivals, but she was shy. And then Kate, having agreed with her mother, began to stay a little longer in the evenings and study with the girl. She gives her confidence that everything will work out in 6 months. At the New Year's Eve matinee, Further was the most vivacious actress, and there were many other wonderful children in Kate's group. Every single one of them. Yes, Kate lived to work, and not just because she loved it. Although she did. But there was also a reason for the work. Kate forgot to dull her pain from the loss of Jake. So many years had passed, and she still could not come to terms with the fact that now she had no best friend, no loved one. The girl was still alone. Young men paid attention to her, some tried to woo her. But Kate was indifferent to all this. It seemed to her that it would always be like that. She didn't need anyone. But one day she met Frank. A young man came to the kindergarten to fix the wiring. He was an electrician. Kate asked him to look at an outlet in her dorm room. Frank agreed and looked favorably at Kate's precise figure. This she didn't notice, because she had never even thought of doing anything like that. That same evening, Frank fixed the socket, then the lock on the door, corrected it, and offered Kate a cup of tea for good measure. The guy didn't refuse. They just sat and talked. The next evening, Frank drove up to the daycare center in an old foreign car. Kate was just getting off work. At first, the girl, as usual, wanted to send her suitors away, but at the last moment she changed her mind and got into the car. It should be noted that Frank was correct, courteous, not complimentary. Probably that was what won Kate over. In some ways, he reminded her of Jake, just as reserved and calm. That's how Kate found herself. Soon they were dating, and 6 months later they were married. Kate moved in with Frank in his 2-bedroom. The girl decided that she had found her happiness, but everything was just beginning. 3 months after the wedding, Kate got pregnant. The girl thought the news would make her husband happy, but for some reason he frowned. "And you're in such a hurry?" he asked. When Kate said that she was at the clinic, and the doctor determined the pregnancy of 5 to 6 weeks. In a hurry, Kate was dumbfounded. "But you and I love each other. It's natural. We're gonna have 3 soon. That's great. What are we gonna raise this baby on?" Do you have any idea how much money it takes to raise a baby? I have no idea. I work with kids. Exactly while you're working. And then you'll be on maternity leave. Are you telling me I'm the only one who has to provide for my family? And he left, slamming the door. That night, Kate was alone in the apartment. At first, she cried because of her husband's words, but then she decided that he was just confused. Now he'd realize everything and come back. Frank came back at night, drunk. It was the first time Kate had seen him like that. "Frank, what's wrong?" She looked out of the bedroom when she heard something fall in the hallway. It turned out to be Frank. "What happened?" Frank grinned, getting up. "You're still asking. You sat on my neck. You want to put the baby on my neck too." "Frank, I don't understand." Kate cried. "Why did you marry me then?" "I don't know." He sat down on a stool in the hallway and shook his head. "I have such problems. And you're also with this pregnancy. I don't know what to do." He finally said it. "You tell me what's wrong." "I owe money, a lot of it." And Frank admitted that sometimes he gambles. Now he has a big debt on him, and it has to be paid off soon. "Where do I get the money?" "I don't know," he sighed. "How much?" $2 million. Kate was horrified. Where would they get that kind of money? "Katya, I was thinking maybe we should sell your dorm room. It's just sitting empty now anyway." "You privatized it, right?" "Yes. 5 years after they gave it to me. So sell it. You could sell it for a good amount of money." Kate was frantically thinking. The room was her only asset, her emergency airfield, as it were. That's where she'd go if she didn't get along with Frank. But why did she think things wouldn't work out with Frank? I mean, it was fine before, and now she's in a situation. Yeah, Frank was confused when he heard she was pregnant. But that's his problem. "Frank, I'll just have to move in with you," she said shyly. He looked at her carefully, then stood up, smiled, and hugged Kate. "No problem. Sweetheart, I just need to sell it fast." "Frank, do you really not want a baby?" "No, honey. I'm just desperate. I'm just saying all these crazy things. It's great that we're having a baby. It's okay. We'll be fine. We just have to start the paperwork for the sale tomorrow." Kate, she nodded and leaned on her husband's shoulder. "I will. You just don't play, and I won't do it again, please," he vowed. And then, lying next to her husband, Kate listened to his breathing and thought that everyone has problems of misunderstanding. The main thing is to say everything in time, and then you can find a way out of the situation. It's not a big deal if she sells her room. She's got her own family nest. And Frank's good, he's just a little off today. That's all right. The important thing is that they're together. Kate had the first half of the day free and decided to take care of the room sale. Frank was so affectionate and sweet. He apologized to Kate for his words yesterday and volunteered to help her. He was a realtor and a realtor of sorts. He knew a realtor and promised to do everything quickly and sell the room at a favorable price. All questions were solved within a week, and soon Kate got the money she needed. However, the girl only held the money in her hands in the bank and handed it to Frank. "I will give it to the creditors today," he promised. Kate stuffs the money into her bag. "All I ask is don't mess with them again. Don't play around." Kate looked at her husband anxiously. "Do you promise me?" "I promise." He threw her a peck on the cheek and hurried off to meet the creditors. Kate went to work, as usual, socializing with the kids, and the day flew by. Kate, having said goodbye to the last childminder, called her husband, but Frank's phone was unavailable. Anxiety crept into the girl's heart. She called again and again, but her husband's phone was silent. Kate took the shuttle bus to her stop and headed for home. It was already getting dark. It was a September evening. Kate walked along the path in the park and pondered what to make for dinner. The anxiety had receded. Frank was just busy. That's why he wasn't answering. Here he would come home from work. They'd have dinner, then they'd lie together on the couch and dream about the future as a couple. Kate smiled at her thoughts already, the three of them. Her husband's car, parked at the entrance, she saw from afar. The girl rejoiced. Here was her husband home. It was strange that he had not met her. But then, there were reasons. She came closer and saw that there was someone in the car. She moved closer and froze. Frank was in the car making out with some girl. Kate jumped out of her seat and forced the car door open. "Good evening, darling." Husband with anger, she pronounced, "You're having a good time." Frank looked at her with a chuckle. "How is that a damsel?" "Not a bit of embarrassment, remorse." "Isn't there anything you want to explain to me?" Kate was shaking with anger. She couldn't contain her emotions. "I don't want to," Frank answered and hugged the girl. "Go home. I'll be right there." "You've got a nerve. I'm your wife." "Frank, how can you?" My wife giggled. "Oh, how interesting." "Frank, did you really marry that chicken?" "It's a temporary thing, dear. Tomorrow I will go to the registry office and file for divorce," with a laugh, Frank told her. Kate stood next to the car like a spitting image. The two men were openly laughing at her. There was no more strength to look at it all. Kate forcefully slammed the car doors and ran towards the house. And then she felt a sharp pain in her stomach. So much so that the girl was literally folded in half. Kate barely made it to the bench, sat down. She was writhing in pain. And Frank and his acquaintance just watched her from the car. Good thing Nana, an old lady neighbor on the landing, came out of the driveway and called an ambulance. Kate could barely remember being taken to the hospital, the doctors fussing over her afterward. She was falling into some kind of pit. Kate woke up the next morning in her room. A nurse was leaning over her. "Wake up affectionately," the woman said. "That's good. Lie down. The doctor will be with you in a moment." Kate wanted to ask what had happened to her, but she had no strength at all. She only closed her eyes. And when she opened them, there was a young doctor standing next to her. He was saying something to her, explaining, and it seemed to the girl that it was not with her. So the child was gone. Finally, realizing everything, she said barely audibly, "Unfortunately, that's true," the doctor sighed. "The important thing is that you were saved in time. You lost a lot of blood. It's a good thing the station had a supply of B negative. Otherwise, there's no telling what would have happened. All right, you fix it. We'll talk more later." Kate didn't pay much attention to the last phrase the doctor said. It wasn't until a week later, when she was on the mend, that the doctor explained to her that she would never have any more children ever again. Kate was publicized. Crushed meant she would never be a mother. It was painful to realize that. In all the time she was in the hospital, Frank never came to her once, as if nothing had ever happened between them. Like she wasn't even his wife. Kate couldn't believe she'd made such a mistake. When she was discharged, she didn't know where to go to Frank's house. What if he was there with his girlfriend? The last thing Kate wanted was to see them together, but she had no other place to go. She'd sold her dorm room. Kate got off the shuttle, walked to the house, glanced at the parking lot. Frank's car was gone, so she wasn't home. It's already easier, at least a little rest, and then it will be seen what to do next. The girl slowly went up to the 4th floor, went to the apartment, took out the keys. And then she realized that the keys did not fit the lock. Had Frank changed the lock? And then the door swung open. On the doorstep stood that Kate girl in a bathrobe. "What are you doing here?" she said rudely. "Kate, get out of here, I live here." The girl said quietly but firmly, "I'm Frank's wife. Who are you?" Yes, she wanted to grab the girl's hair, throw her down the stairs. But she only had the strength to stand and talk a little. "You wife," the maiden replied with a sneer. "You're a 5-minute ex-wife. Frank has already filed for divorce. Here are your things and get out of here." After these words, the maiden put Kate's suitcase out. The girl looked at it, realizing that she simply has nowhere to go, and she really has no rights to this apartment. After all, Frank never registered her. And now he had filed for divorce. "It turns out to be a robe," she said quietly. "What bathrobe?" The girl was dumbfounded. "You're wearing my robe," Kate remarked. "So take it." The girl laughed, pulling off her robe. She had a good figure, probably better than Kate's. For some reason, the girl remarked to herself. The robe fell to her feet. She looked down at it at the girl, who was laughing in her eyes. It was sickening. And then the neighbor's door opened. "There's a comparison," Minna exclaimed. "No shame, no conscience. Cover up Cindy, you bastard. Why should I be ashamed? I'm good in a robe and without it," laughed the girl. And you, old girl, envy me silently. Her laughter, the sight of her. Kate felt dizzy. She seemed to be in hell. Nina saw herself sway. The girl picked her up by the elbow and then led her into the apartment and rolled her suitcase. The old lady sat the girl down in the kitchen and poured tea. Scoundrel, that Frank. I always knew he was a bastard. I thought he was with you. He'd come to his senses, but the humped man's in the grave. Nina, I don't understand who that girl is. I can barely hear Kate. Why is she being so insolent? And Frank, I don't get it. He said he loved me. I mean, we married him. Frank was always changing chicks like a glove. How many years in a row are they gonna split up? He'd take other women to his apartment. Then they get back together. Then he married you. At first I thought he really loved you. But it's something else. He was always after some kind of gain. You didn't give him any money by any chance. I did, Kate whispered. I sold my room, and she told the old lady everything. Nina only listened and shook her head. He cheated you out of your money, didn't he? Said the old lady afterwards. I don't believe he's a gambler. Frank is very cunning. He got you to sell your room on purpose. Did you even get a receipt from him? What receipt? Nina confronted Kate. He's my husband. I trusted him. I carried his baby in my heart. What is this? Now I have no child, no place to live. I'm a bum even without a residence permit. The girl sobbed, dropped her head on the table. The old woman sat closer, stroked her back, calmed her down. You try to go to the police, she advised. Maybe you'll get the money back. But I gave it to her myself. That's true. That's what a girl should do. While I'm here, you and Frank should meet and talk. You wouldn't be the last bastard to leave a girl on the street. But as it turned out later, Frank was just that. In the evening of the same day, he laughed, looking Kate in the eyes, and said that she would not prove anything. She gave the money herself, and that she'd lost the baby. That was her problem. He didn't feel any guilt. Where's Kate? He doesn't care about living. He lives in his apartment with the woman he loves. You're a fool, Kate, a knave fool. I just taught you a lesson. You can't take anyone's word for it. He told her goodbye. And I don't understand. Why did you marry me? Kate asked. How are we supposed to trust our husbands? He laughed. How else would you sell your room? He winked and added with a sneer. But that's between you and me. Kate turned away. It was sickening to look at someone she'd recently loved. Had she? Maybe she convinced herself she did, when he reminded her of Jake the first time they'd met. That was the right answer. Kate spent the night at Grandma's in his apartment and then moved in with a coworker. She worked at the kindergarten as a laundress. The girls got along well. Was there no one else to turn to? No. Nina offered to stay with her. But could you live next door to Frank, see him and his sneaky girlfriend? To see them all the time? No, it was beyond me. Anna had a 3-room apartment. True, her husband and 2 children still lived there. But there was a place for Kate in Anna's apartment. I will go as soon as I find something suitable, the girl assured. You can live as long as you want, Anna nodded. And although Kate was treated kindly by all members of the family, but the girl realized that you cannot abuse hospitality. A month passed. Kate received a divorce certificate. She didn't go to the police. She didn't start a fight with Frank for her money. She realized she wouldn't get anywhere. The girl stayed with Anna. One Sunday morning, Kate got a call on her cell phone from an unknown number. Kate, hello. She heard a joyful female voice. You can't imagine how hard it was for me to recognize your number. First, I called the orphanage. Then I called everyone I knew. I could barely find it. Where'd you disappear to? Kelly's friend. Is that you? Unsure? Kate asked. I finally found out how your friend was doing. It was the same Kelly with whom they had once shared a room in the orphanage, from which there had been so many misunderstandings. But time had passed, and there was nothing to share now. Kate was genuinely happy to hear from her former roommate. They chatted about nothing for a while. Then they remembered Jake. He was a good guy. Kelly said with a sigh, I'm so sorry about what happened, and I'm still ashamed of you for what happened. Did you bring up the ring, Kate? I'm so sorry. I was in love with Jake back then. I was mad at you. I realize now how stupid I was. It's all in the past. I forgave Jake a long time ago. He'll always be the brightest memory of my life. Oh, you make it sound like you're reciting a requiem. When you get married? Yeah, I've already been there. And Kate told Kelly all about marrying Frank. No, they weren't friends, but there was nothing to share. And Kelly is basically a good person. So now you have no place to live because of that asshole. Kelly gasped. What a bastard. It's okay, Kate. He's gonna pay for everything. You'll see. I sold my room too. Kelly told me she'd just gotten married and moved to Detroit. Husband's from there. Now she works in a bakery with her husband. They bought an apartment with a mortgage. Katya, why don't you come visit us in Detroit? Kelly suddenly suggested it. Why is it nice here? Well, it's freezing in the winter. But there's so much snow. Sometimes it blows. Real snowy kingdoms. But in general, the city is normal, quiet. You can live and work. I live here too. I'm staying with a friend of mine in a little cubbyhole. No, Kate, that's no good. Listen, my David has an aunt who's been looking for someone to work for a long time. You know, neat, well-mannered. She won't charge any money at all for a room. She wants someone to talk to, and just a living soul in the apartment. She's old, so she can't find anyone in town. We can find someone, but our aunt is a nuisance. She won't take anyone off the street. And you're an acquaintance. I put in a good word for you. I think you'll find a job easily. Katya, come and think about it. Why do you want to live where there's been so much trouble? You have to change everything. Kelly, thanks. I'll think about it. The girls chatted a little more and said goodbye. Kate didn't take Kelly's offer seriously. That's the kind of girl who'd take off 1,000 kilometers away from her hometown on a whim. At least Kate had her favorite job. But soon the girl was dealt another blow. Ethan, Anna's husband, came home from work drunk. His son and daughter were already asleep. Anna also went to the bedroom. The landlord was drinking tea in the kitchen and Kate had gone to the bathroom. At some point, the bathroom door opened and Ethan appeared on the threshold. Kate was in the shower. The girl is so confused that she can't even say a word. She only covers herself with her hands. And looking at Ethan in horror at what Ethan was up to, and held out his hands to Kate. Then Anna appeared, sensing trouble. Ah, you're not a wooer, she shrieked. She grabbed a towel and began to them her husband. He obediently bore the blows. Then he turned around and went to bed, and Kate crawled into the bathroom. Anya was crying. He came out of the blue. I was so frightened, she sobbed. Anna looked at her menacingly like a cat unexpectedly. You've been tailing my husband for a long time, she hissed. That's a snake on your chest. It was you who decided to answer me for my kindness. And I did nothing. And you would have done more. So that tomorrow morning your spirit in my apartment was not in my apartment. You can live wherever you want. And be thankful I don't kick you out in the night. She left, slamming the door. And Kate sat in the bathroom. What was this black streak in her life? She was so sick of everything. And then she remembered her conversation with Kelly. She had to change things up. Kate left her robe and slipped into the storage room where she was staying with Anna. Found Kelly's number. Called Kate. Did you look at your watch? Kelly answered sleepily. It's 2:00 in the morning. Oh, I'm sorry. Kate realized. It's only the 12th hour. Okay, I'll call you tomorrow. No, you already woke me up. Tell me why you're calling. Kelly, your offer still stands. You mean the lady at David's? I just told her about you yesterday. She's agreed to take you in. And the best part is, she knows someone. The head of the daycare center might be interested. Then I'll leave tomorrow. Kate said firmly. Okay, I'll meet you. You call me later. Tell me the train and the number of the car. So they agreed. The next day, Kate quit the kindergarten, despite the anger of the headmistress. After all, she hadn't worked for 2 weeks, but Kate couldn't explain it to her. The whole thing was kind of embarrassing. And the girl was also sorry to leave her pupils, but Kate saw no other way out. She had to change her life and start from scratch. Detroit met Kate with heavy rain. The girl with a stream of other passengers rushed into the transition. A dark, low tunnel. In some places, water dripped from the ceiling. Kate couldn't help eating. It felt uncomfortable. Anxious thoughts more and more overwhelmed the girl. Maybe she had come here for nothing. And where was Kelly, who had promised to meet her? No, Kelly? Had she really lied to her? And then a large, full-bodied young woman came from the side of the crowd. Kate, finally, I didn't go to the platform. I forgot my umbrella at home, and there you can be thrown down to nothing in no time. Here I'm standing, all my eyes have already looked closely. The woman closed a strong embrace on their shoulders. The girl sank on her chest. Finally, having freed herself, Kate stared at this madam. And only now she realized that this is Kelly she is. And you remember her, skinny, long, like a victim. And here's this gorgeous lady. You didn't recognize me, did you? Kelly guessed and laughed out loud. Yeah, I was a little slimmer on the government cards. Kelly, you're slim now. You've just gotten bigger. Kate smiled shyly. But you were a mouse, and you're still a mouse. We'll feed you. I winked. Kelly, I'll feed you buns like this from my bakery. You'll never taste so good. You haven't tasted it. All right, enough talk. Let's go. There's a cab waiting in the parking lot. I have to go to work in a couple hours. Kelly was talking on the way. Talking. And Kate listened and smiled. I never thought they'd be so excited to meet Kelly. She seems really cool. Why couldn't she and Kelly get along when they were kids? The girls ran out of the train station with squeals and laughter, dragging Kate's suitcase to the blue Toyota. How often do you get a downpour like this? Wiping her wet bangs with a handkerchief, asked Kate already in the car. The first rain since the beginning of summer, answered the cab driver. Is this your first time in our city? If the city welcomes rain, it's lucky, smiled the cab driver. Kelly nodded approvingly in response. Kate looked thoughtfully out the window. What was really waiting for her in the city? Kelly took her straight to her landlady's apartment. Why wait? You'll get to know each other right away. Don't worry, you two like each other. Our Lucy's a nice lady. She's worked in schools all her life, by the way. Will you sing with her about pedagogy? And then she was quiet for a while, and then she said, Kate, I'm so happy to see you. And I was honest with Kate. And when they were climbing the stairs to the 5th floor, Kate asked Svet, and why did you call me anyway? Why did you come? She looked at the girl attentively, and I had nowhere else to go. That's exactly what I realized. In talking to you, Lucy was warned about the new housing. Kelly praised Kate so much that the old teacher believed her. The normal girl was picked up by a relative. Barely had the bell rung before she had already swung the doors open on the landing. Standing next to Kelly was a short, blonde-haired girl. She was visibly worried, clutching the handle of her suitcase with her slender fingers. And Kate saw a lean older woman with a sharp stare and upturned lips. The girl felt uneasy. Would she be able to find a common language with this strict lady? But then Lucy smiled, and her eyes warmed. Wrinkles ran down her face. What are we doing? Shall we go in? Let's get acquainted in a pleasant voice, she said. And Kate, a little dared, stepped into the apartment. And Kelly, saying she was busy, ran down the stairs. So Kelly and I lived in the same orphanage. Lucy began her interrogation. Her face became serious again. Kate nodded shyly in response. We'll see. What a man you are. Lucy pursed his lips in a familiar way. I didn't like Kelly right away, to be honest. It was disturbing that she was an orphan. I won't hide it. I even tried to talk David out of marrying her. But did my nephew listen to who? Although in this case he made the right choice. Kelly's a good hostess, loves him. But God doesn't give them children. Lucy sighed, and then again her thin lips spread into a smile. Do you know why Kelly went out of her way to help you? But we grew up together. So what of it? Lucy laughed. Kelly is kind, trusting, and she went to a witch doctor about her infertility. She's been to every hospital she and David have ever been to. So now she's throwing the scroll at all kinds of quacks. So this witch doctor gave her some herbs and told her to read incantations. He also told her to do 3 good deeds in the near future. First, she picked up a puppy on the street, then money. How much she could donate to charity. And I understand you're her 3rd good deed. I've been a little accommodating. Well, God willing, our Kelly will do well. I don't believe in that stuff, but there, who knows, says Lucy in between allocated Kate a towel, showed her room to the bathroom. And I'll go to the table. Close. You must be hungry from the road. Kate shook her head timidly, but the landlady only grinned and went to the kitchen. Smirking, the girl wondered what a strange woman this Lucy was. It would seem and timid, so in her prickly look, but it is worth it to smile, then immediately want to smile back. And she speaks so interestingly with humor. Yes, at such a teacher, probably, the students never made noise and listened to her, opening their mouths. After tea, they talked about living conditions. The spare Lucy didn't take any money. Only the utilities were agreed to be paid in half. Kate was happy with everything. Finally, she decided to ask about the job. The daycare center is 2 blocks away. There are good press schools from here. The principal is a former student of mine. I've already told about you. Tomorrow morning, go and find out for yourself. Lucy told her. Anyway, I've cast a rod, and the rest depends on you. Kate realized that not everything would be so easy with her employment. She was a little tense, but decided that she would solve problems as they came. After tea, she lined up in her room. It was small, but quite cozy. Kate liked it squared almost like her former dorm room. Thinking back to the past, Kate felt sad. But then, putting aside all sorrows, she began to sort out her things from her suitcase. Suddenly, in a secret pocket of the suitcase, she fumbled for something. Little Round ran her hand into the pocket and pulled out a ring. The same silver ring that Jake had once given her. She'd stuffed it in her suitcase a long time ago when she'd moved in with Frank. She'd forgotten all about it. Good thing her ex-husband's new mistress. And the suitcase again. So Kate would have pulled out the ring and tried it on. Her fingers hadn't changed a bit over the years. The ring fit perfectly. Will you be my talisman now? Kate whispered and kissed the jewelry. And she truly believed that it would be. The next day in the morning, Kate went to the kindergarten. The guard at the entrance listened to her and led her through to the headmistress. Opening the door to the room, the girl heard the familiar for her children's hum and involuntarily smiled. She was beginning to miss the voices of children. Kate stepped into the waiting room. Colorful children's booths, a bench against the wall, a table with drawings in the corner. It was almost exactly the same as it had been at her previous place of employment. Her heart raced in excitement. And then Kate heard a baby crying. It was coming from one stall. The girl raised her eyebrows, looked around, no educator or nanny. So they have a child escaped from the group. And they hadn't even missed her yet. Kate cautiously opened the stall door from where the crying could be heard. A boy of about 4 years old looked up at her with tears flooding everything. Baby, are you playing hide and seek? Kate smiled, asked the boy. Barely audible. Can't pronounce the letter R. You're right though, they don't wear gloves yet. So Yuri, I'm Liam. The boy mumbled, less crying. The boy looked at the strange aunt with interest. So you are Liam. Kate continued with a smile. You're sitting in the cabin. I'm hiding. Seriously, said Liam. From who? I don't know. I want to go home. The boy sighed again. Kate smiled so radiantly at him, stretched out her arms that the boy involuntarily went to her. The girl picked him up, held him close to her, and went down the corridor. Kate told Kostya about the mouse, about the magic bird, about the fairyland. Who are you? She heard a menacing shout. Put the child down. The door of the group opened. A woman looked out. Apparently, the teacher. Did the baby hide in your stall? Kate answered her calmly. I was just calming him down. Liam, the woman sighed again. Woe is me. And when you ran away, the boy only clung tighter to Kate. Go to the boys, she whispered to the child. Will you come again? He asked. I will. Kate smiled. The boy was no longer crying. He calmly went to the teacher. He's only been in kindergarten for a week, and he's still getting used to it. For some reason, the teacher decided to justify herself for missing the child. I see. So she's here. The teacher pointed behind Kate's back in the office doorway. A little farther down the corridor stood a woman in her 50s. She was carefully watching what was happening. Hello, Kate stepped towards her. Worried. I came from Lucy, and... The woman threw an appraising glance at Kate and invited her into the office. Then she studied the documents for a long time. Kate was silent, sometimes throwing long glances at the girl. Actually, I don't take people off the street. I need character references, feedback, finally, from the clan. But given Lucy's request and the way you've quickly gotten along with the boy, I'll take you on probation, and then time will tell. Thank you. Kate was pleased. So you will have a middle group, and you have already met one of your future students? This is Liam. Come to work tomorrow at 8:30. You'll be working with Adriana for a while to get used to it. And then you'll be in a good mood on your own, won't you? Kate came out of kindergarten. Yes, things are working out just fine for her. The next morning, at the appropriate time, Kate was already at the workplace with Adriana. They took the kids in between. The new coworker told Kate that the previous partner had been working for a month and had quit. The workload's terrible. So yesterday, she missed Liam. It was worth mentioning him here, and he showed up on the doorstep with his mom. The boy habitually lost his eyes, already opened his mouth to start sobbing, when suddenly he saw Kate. And today you will find out where the mouse ran away. She smiled. The boy immediately forgot about the tears. He quickly changed his clothes and approached Kate. He held out his arms to her. Liam, you are already big. His mom said guiltily, but still it's more familiar on the arms. Kate answered her and took the baby and the children into the playroom. I'll manage on my own with relief, said Adriana, happy that Liam is not screaming and crying today. Kate went off to the group, put Liam in a chair, surrounded herself with more kids, and told them a story about a mouse she was making up as she went along. In her story, the mouse traveled around the world, suffered many trials, and then ended up in a fairyland, and everything was fine. Little by little, the group was filled with children, and everyone listened with interest to the new teacher and smiled back at her. Finally, Adriana entered the group. She led the last child by the hand. She commanded all the kids to exercise, and they all lined up in a row. And at the beginning, I'll introduce you to the new kindergartners. Adriana pointed to a colleague standing next to her. Her name is Kate. You should listen to her as much as you listen to me. All the little ones nodded in response. And the girl who entered the group last suddenly frowned her eyebrows, and then loudly said her name wrong. It's Aunt Maria. Adriana and Kate glanced over at each other. The latter shrugged at Nancy. You're wrong, Adriana said firmly. Everyone start charging. And the woman, despite her weight, deftly showed the kids exercises, which they did with pleasure. Kate went to help the nurse set the table for breakfast. Once in a while, the girl felt someone's eyes on her. It was the same Nancy who was looking at her. The girl's eyes read surprise and incomprehension. After breakfast, the kids practiced. Then they all went for a walk. The children played on the playground, and Adriana and Kate watched them closely. But one child was still watching the new kindergarten teacher. Nancy and occasionally cast surprised glances at Kate. And then, when Adriana turned away, she suddenly came up to her and said, I recognize you for what you are. You're Maria. I've seen you in our house, and my father knows you. He even has a picture of you. He often looks at it. It's in his briefcase. Nancy, you're confusing me with someone in gold. Kate said confusedly. My name is Kate, and I have recently arrived in your town. The girl looked incredulous again and stepped aside. Adriana heard their conversation, and who could Nancy have confused you with? The colleague was surprised. That's strange. She's a girl, she's smart. She has a good memory. You don't know that for sure. No, Kate shook her head. I've never seen her before. She must have made something up out of frustration. Adriana sighed. There was a real disaster in the family, Nancy's mother. She died about 3 months ago. She's been drinking and driving and crashed. But Nancy's dad is very positive, works at the institute. He's a young professor, a historian, and how could he choose such a wife? Now he's raising a little girl, the poor guy's torn. It's a sad story, Kate sighed. You're right, Adriana. The girl just misses her mom. She's probably looking for similarities in other women, but you're nothing like her. Jenna Burnett had black eyes like that, Adriana remarked. Kate only shrugged her shoulders. That evening, Kate waited patiently for the last of the guys to be picked up. Adriana left a little early, but Kate didn't grumble. She could handle herself, and now Nancy was the only one left in the group. Adriana had warned that the girl's father was always late picking her up. Kate read Nancy a fairy tale, and the girl listened and looked at the teacher. "I understand why you don't recognize me." Suddenly the girl said, "You have an evil wizard behind you." Kate only sighed. She decided not to change the girl's mind. Time would pass, and she would forget everything. And then Nancy enlightened-faced Daddy, shouted the girl, and ran towards the door. Kate turned and saw at the entrance to the group a man taller than average dense-build redhead with freckles on his nose. The girl froze like that. The man looked so much like Jake, only a little older. And the man looked at Kate without taking his eyes off. Maria finally spoke up. "Daddy, I tell her she's Maria too. She doesn't believe it," screamed Nancy and rushed to her father. "I'm not Maria," Kate replied in confusion. "But you remind me very much of a friend of mine." "Maria, you really don't recognize me." "Yes, you are mistaken," shouted the girl. "I'm Kate. I can show you my passport." And the girl reached for her bag. Then she approached the man and shoved the document under his nose. He carefully read what was written there and once again looked at the girl. "Surely you are not Maria." Finally, he said, "Just very similar. But you're a little shorter. Your hair is longer, but from a distance. You are the same face, and your birth date is next to each other. Maria was born on October 30th, and you on the 31st. It's amazing, you're like sisters." How could she, who grew up in an orphanage, know that? Kate didn't understand anything. She felt like she was in some theater of the absurd. She reminded her of Maria, and this man reminded her of Jake. "Didn't you have a brother?" Suddenly she asked. "It's just that you look a lot like Jake. We grew up together in the orphanage." The man looked at her in surprise again. "What orphanage?" he asked hoarsely. Kate called it. "Yes, I was born there. And I had a brother, I found out. Then he died." Kate swayed when she heard that. Could this be the same older brother Jake used to be taken away from his mother? "Even though you've already been released." "Let's go to the cafe and talk," the man suggested. "My name is Peter, by the way," the girl agreed. The three of them came to the nearest cafe, and while Nancy was playing in the children's corner, Peter told her that at the age of 7 he was removed from his family, and a year later adopted by a childless couple. His parents had never hidden the fact that he wasn't their own, but had decided to move far away from where the boy had been born anyway. Away from a neglectful mother, away from evil tongues. They gave him their name. They put everything they had into raising him. "Yeah, my parents told me I had a brother in that town. He was just a kid when they took me away. I didn't know anything about him. Then a few years ago, after my parents died, I decided to find out where he was. I wanted to find out about your birth mother, too. Yeah, I always wanted to do that, but I didn't dare when my parents were alive. I was afraid of offending them." Peter was silent and then continued. "I learned that the biological mother burned from vodka, and the younger brother died in the army. They were on Africa." Kate said quietly. "Yes, his name was Jake, and he was my friend." They looked at each other in shock. It was unbelievable that their meeting had happened. "I can't believe it. Alas, Jake's brother." Kate shook her head, sighing. "Well, you two do look alike. Jake was also the same redhead with the same freckles. Not in kindergarten, it seemed like he was the one who had just grown up for a lifetime. Freckles." Peter grinned. "I used to be so self-conscious about it. But then I got over it. I was worried that Nancy wouldn't look like me. Are your legs harder on you guys?" "You're wrong. They're very cute freckles." Kate smiled through the forced to ask the big question. "Will you explain one more thing why you and Nancy call me Maria? Who is she?" Peter laughed, said something about an acquaintance. Then suddenly he looked at his watch, apologized, and hurried out. He called out to Nancy. "Maybe I could give you a ride?" he offered. "No, thank you. I live close by." Kate declined, looking thoughtfully at Peter. What secret was he hiding? Almost all night, Kate could not sleep well. She wondered if she had a sister too. After all, Jake had a brother. Who was Maria? Peter didn't sleep that night either. He remembered the story of his love, looked at the photo card. on which there was a girl, really very similar to Kate with his wife Jenna. Peter was at the same institute, and they got married in their final year. At the time, Peter thought they were doing great. Jenna loved him, he was in love with her. 2 years later, they had Nancy, and 2 years later, Jenna suddenly became bored with family life. She was not satisfied with the fact that her young husband was not earning much at his institute. The first time Peter caught her with a lover in her own apartment, the lover threw down the stairs. Jenna wanted to kick them out, but only because of her daughter did not do it. Because Jenna would have left with Nancy, and Peter loved his daughter more than life. But Jenna continued to cheat on Peter. And then she started drinking while his foster parents were alive, and Nancy spent a lot of time with them, and then they died in a car accident. Peter was torn between work and taking care of his daughter, and Jenna continued to go out. It was only then that Peter learned that his wife had an inherited affinity for drinking. Her mother lived in a remote village and also drank, although Peter still considered it simple promiscuity. He didn't have the best genes either. Nevertheless, he got a higher education, defended his PhD. He wasn't the least bit attracted to drink. He tried talking to his wife. He persuaded her to undergo treatment, but she only laughed, called him a wimp. Peter sometimes considered himself a wimp too. Despite Jenna's lifestyle, her addiction, he still loved her. Yes, he could get a divorce and have his daughter by court order. But he couldn't let Nancy grow up without a mother. But it was difficult to manage the house and work by himself. And then Peter decided to hire a housekeeper to keep the house in order and look after Nancy. But nothing good came out of it. One day a young girl called at their apartment. She introduced herself as Maria, said she was from a recruitment company. Peter liked her. Young, quiet, sweet. He immediately offered her a job. Nancy was home the same day. Maria quickly got along with her too. They played and walked and cooked dinner. And then Jenna came home. When the wife saw the young girl in the house, she made a scene with Peter. "Throw her out," she screamed. "Otherwise, I won't be able to take care of myself." Peter urged her to calm down and accept the situation. But Jenna only screamed more. And then Maria made up her own mind. She told Peter that she couldn't work in such an environment. "I really liked your daughter," she confessed. "But I don't want a scandal with your wife, so I'm leaving. Please don't do this," begged Peter. "Jenna will calm down. You'll see. When she does, call our agency. If I'm free, I'd be happy to continue working for you. Can I have your phone number?" Maria thought about it and agreed. She took out her small photo card and wrote the number on the back. She didn't say anything about why she was giving Peter her photo. She just gave him a long look, and his heart jumped in excitement. Yes, Maria was a wonderful girl. Peter wondered for the first time how long he could put up with his alcoholic wife. Maybe he should change everything in his life. For several months, Peter agonized and realized that he fell in love like a boy almost at first sight. But every time intending to call Maria, he stopped himself. Wouldn't he regret it later? After all, he's married. He hired an old woman to be his housekeeper. This time his wife was quiet. She stopped doing anything around the house. Only with Nancy a little engaged in the kindergarten, picked up when they were on a bender. But Peter still cared for his daughter more than his own mother. And then Jenna died. She drove drunk and lost control of the car. It was a shock to Peter and a relief at the same time. Yes, Nancy missed her mother, but she's a little girl. She'll forget. After burying his wife, Peter finally decided to call Maria, but her phone was unavailable. He dialed every evening and always got an answering machine. He sat pensively looking at the photo card Maria had given him. What if he had called her right away? If they had started a relationship then? Yes, Jenna, he would have broken it off. And maybe that would have been the impetus for her to make things right. She would have realized she needed to do things differently. Quit drinking. Stayed alive. Peter immediately convinced himself otherwise. Jenna wouldn't have gotten better. She had purposely killed herself and had finally accomplished it. Peter did not notice at first that his little daughter was looking at him attentively when he was sitting like that, thinking about what happened and what did not happen. One day she climbed into his lap, saw the picture. "Is that Maria?" the girl asked. "Do you remember her?" She used to read me a story. She was beautiful. Only Mom was better. Peter hugged his daughter tightly and kissed her. Of course, for the little girl, her mom was the best mom ever. One day he called the employment agency and asked about Maria. She no longer worked for us, he was informed. Maria had quit. Where could he find her without a clue? Peter asked for Maria's home address, but of course nobody told him anything. And he was resigned to the fact that he had lost Maria. As suddenly saw in kindergarten teacher, so similar to her in the first seconds, he really thought that Kate is Maria. But then he realized, it seems, even too much. But Kate is a little shorter and a little thinner. And in the time he hadn't seen Maria, the girl's hair couldn't have grown to that length. They're clearly her own unbroken. But where did the resemblance come from? Peter realized there was no such thing as coincidence. Especially Kate said that she grew up in an orphanage. So Maria could be Kate's sister. It wasn't until morning that Peter decided he should tell his daughter's new caretakers and a little more about the former housekeeper. No, he wouldn't pour his heart out to her, just refer her to the very agency Maria worked for. Maybe Kate will be able to find her. And then Peter can meet with Maria and talk frankly. In the evening, he went to pick up his daughter at daycare as usual. Nancy took Kate out of the group. "Kate, I have been thinking all night, and I think you have a right to know how I know Maria," said Peter. "I think you really are sisters because I don't believe in coincidences like that. I confided in Kate too. Peter told me about the agency, gave me the coordinates. Maybe you could get Maria's home address." He mumbled. He also showed me a picture of Maria. Yes, there could be no doubt. Kate looked a lot like Maria. Sorry, at 6, he left with his daughter from the Actors Day Care Center. A body, a business card with an address. What secrets would she have to uncover? The girl was distraught. For several days, Kate did not dare to contact the agency, and then, gathering her courage, went to the right address. She had a few hours to spare, since she and Adriana were now working in shifts. She was stopped at the entrance to the office by a tall blonde woman. "Maria Yu," the girl exclaimed. "Are you alive?" Kate shrugged her shoulders uncertainly. "I don't know what to answer. Of course she is alive, and she's not Maria." And the maiden looked at her dumbfounded. "I was at your funeral. Maria, I didn't dream about you." "I'm not Maria," Kate admitted. "I just look a lot like her, and I want to understand why you won't give me her home address." "For God's sake," the girl replied confusedly. Kate thanked her and turned to leave, but then she remembered. "You say Maria is dead. How did it happen?" "An accident." After a short silence, the girl answered, "And I don't know in which cemetery she was buried." "Do you know?" "Yes, the city cemetery." Kate didn't know anything about that information. She just took it as a note. She called a cab and drove to the right address. The house Maria lived in was old, more like barracks. Kate looked apprehensively at the steps leading to the second floor and hesitantly stepped up. Then faster and faster, as long as she didn't linger on the rotten boards. After all, you could definitely fall down. On the second floor, Kate found apartment 23. It was here, as the blonde said and lived before Maria. There was no bell, and Kate insistently knocked on the door. And before she heard a woman's voice. Then slow footsteps, heavy breathing, coughing. The landlady was obviously ill. A few minutes later, the door swung open, and Kate saw a woman of no particular age. Short, thin, a little from the mountains, long from the ground, and her complexion gave away a severe illness. When she saw Kate, the woman suddenly covered her face with her hands and cried out thinly, "Oh," and almost fell senseless. Kate caught her in time to pick her up. "Maria, are you alive?" faintly said the woman. Sama literally in the saw and with eyes in her face. "Girls, my name is Kate. I've been told I look a lot like Maria. I want to understand why the woman continues to look at the guest with horror. Kate, your name is Kate. Oh my God." The woman covered her face with her hands and sobbed. Kate stood by her side, not knowing whether to leave or stay. "Can you tell me why Maria and I look so much alike? I've seen her picture." Indeed, the resemblance is enormous. The woman continued to cry. Suddenly, she abruptly quieted down. pulled her hands away from her face and said quietly but clearly, "The resemblance, because you're sisters, born 5 minutes apart." Kate had expected to hear something like that. But who was this woman? Is she your mother's own mother and your mother's sister? "My name is Helen," the woman said. "You come in, since you found me. I'll tell you everything." And then Kate heard the story of her birth. Kate's mother's name was Vanessa, a sweet, beautiful girl. Everybody liked her. Vanessa and Helen lived in the same town where Kate was found. Helen was in medical school. Vanessa had just entered culinary school. One day, Helen brought a friend of hers to her parents' house. She wanted to introduce him to the family. Jacob took a liking to the parents. They chatted easily and casually. Helen was happy and already dreamed about the upcoming wedding. The girl did not notice how her younger sister looked at Jacob, and he himself furtively cast glances at her. Helen did not notice anything at all, until one day she caught Vanessa in bed with Jacob. The girl did not expect such betrayal. She ran away from home, wandering the streets in tears. Her father found her and convinced her that, despite everything, she had to go on living. "Forgive them," her father said. "Dad, how can I forgive them? Vanessa is my sister, and she did such a despicable thing." "Jacob, he swore he loved me. I hate them, Vanessa. Not my sister anymore." "Don't say that," father frowned. "Yes, she was wrong, but still a silly little girl. Forgive her, and give Jacob to her." Helen laughed hysterically. "Just walk away and see what happens," replied the father. Helen left, or rather went to a neighboring town that had a similar medical school. She stopped communicating with her parents and sister. She forbade herself to think about Jacob. She studied, worked part-time. After technical school, she got a job at a polyclinic in the women's room. And what was her surprise when she saw Vanessa at the doctor's office? She was sitting in the office with a huge belly. "I would personally advise you to have a conservatorship," the doctor told Vanessa. "You're well past your due date, especially if you're carrying twins. You can't risk it." "Doctor, I can't." "Yes, my stomach's a little choppy, but it's not critical. You're just writing me the right meds. Look, I've got things to do here and here." She turned around and saw Helen. Vanessa turned pale and then held out her little sisterly hands to Helen. "I've been looking for you here. Here I came to talk to you." What made Helen's voice tremble? "Helen, let's not do this here." They left the office. "Jacob left me when he found out I was pregnant," the sister confessed. "My parents disowned me, said I'd embarrassed them. He had a falling out with you. Aren't they right?" Of course they were right. "I realize now how much trouble I've been in. Helen, I'm sorry. I came to you to ask you to talk to your parents. Tell them you're not angry with me. Let them forgive me. I'm about to give birth, and I don't know what to do for my girlfriends. Jump in the water." Helen grinned. "You're not my sister anymore," and she left. She wouldn't listen to her sister anymore. Vanessa left. Helen had been remembering their meeting all this time. She felt no guilt for herself. Her sister had gotten what she deserved. And then Helen decided to check on her parents. After all, they appeared to be taking her side. Neither her mother nor father knew where Vanessa was. They were happy to see Helen, surrounded her with care and attention. They didn't want to hear about the little one. If she was pregnant, that was her problem. In the evening, Helen went for a walk around the city. Not far from the house, she saw Vanessa. It turns out that she came to her parents to fall at their feet and beg for forgiveness. But she never made it home. "They won't forgive you," Helen said. "There's no place to sleep tonight," Vanessa cried. "The last friend asked for a way out, so go to our cottage." After thinking about it, Helen replied, "Live there until the birth, and from there you will call an ambulance when the time comes. And then you'll make arrangements with your parents. Wait, here I'll take out the keys to the dockshot and some groceries." "Thank you." Vanessa Helen was happy. "Have you forgiven me?" Nothing. Her sister didn't answer her. No, she didn't. She just suddenly decided to take pity. And the next day, Helen planned to go to her place with her parents. She said goodbye, decided to stop by Faith's, and found her sister. Anyway, Helen also realized from the pain that Vanessa was in labor and the ambulance would not arrive in time. She delivered her sister's baby. How much did it cost her? Vanessa, and separated her from her beloved Very, giving birth to his children. That's not how it's supposed to be. It was Helen who was supposed to be the mother of Jacob's children when 2 babies were born one after another. Helen's nerves were on edge. A monstrous plan was brewing in her head. "You're on your back a lot," she said to Vanessa. "I called an ambulance, but until it arrives exhausted from labor," the sister smiled gratefully and looked at her babes sleeping next to her. She whispered, "Like angels." "Like angels?" Helen replied through gritted teeth. She left the house in the evening. It was late fall. It was good that the neighbors had already left. No one would hear anything and no one would see anything. Helen found a small can of gasoline in the shed, but then changed her mind. Everything would have to be. Naturally, she went back into the house. Vanessa was asleep, cuddled up with her daughters, merrily poring over the wood in the stove that Helen had recently heated. She opened the firebox and threw out a few burning embers, throwing a glance at the gas tank standing nearby. Yes, things would happen quickly. Helen was about to leave, but suddenly she froze, turned around. No, she didn't feel sorry for her sister. But the children are the daughters of her beloved. Let him be a traitor, but she still hadn't forgotten him. Helen picked up the baby on her arm and hurriedly left the dacha. Soon the house was battered by flames, and Helen meanwhile hitchhiked to the city. On the way she came to her senses. Why did she need 2 children? What would she do with them? She didn't hesitate. She left one girl on the doorstep of the hospital, and with the other she went to her house. She decided to hitchhike so that no one would remember that she had left her hometown with a child. And in the morning, when she was already asleep in her apartment, her parents called. They now knew her phone number. The crying mother said that their dacha had burned down. In the midst of the fire, they found the woman's remains. It is assumed to be an accident. What about the children? Helen asked. There's a tank exploded. You can't make out anything. The mother sobbed into the phone. My father and I can't understand how she ended up at the cottage. She must have taken the keys to the cottage when she left the house. Yes, that's what the investigator says. Oh, my daughter, how could it be? If we had known it would happen like this, both her and her father realized what they'd done. They had pushed away their own blood, but nothing could be undone. The investigation wasn't very thorough. They determined it was an accident, and that was it. And Helen told everyone that she found the girl at the train station. Allegedly, she came by train, passed by garbage cans at the parking lot at the station, heard a child crying from one of them. She went over and took the girl. She didn't say anything to anyone. Immediately, she felt so sorry for the little girl that she took her in her arms and took her away. Even the police believed her. Helen had the ticket in hand. She spoke confidently. Who would have doubted her actions? A nice young woman, also a medic. Then Helen was allowed to adopt a girl. Helen went on maternity leave and became a happy mother. She tried to forget about the terrible October evening, as well as the funeral. In fact, Helen even went to say goodbye to her sister. And at the funeral, she cried sincerely, seeing her off. As time went on, Helen moved away from her native place from a simple midwife in the polyclinics, became in charge of the maternity ward. She was a respected person. No one could say a bad word about her. Helen helped a lot of women. How many babies she took at once and cannot say. During her work, she received certificates of merit. About Helen more than once wrote in the local newspaper all her life. All her actions seemed to be on the radar in a small town. Personal life at Helen never developed. There were a few romances, but they all ended rather quickly. It was worth Helen noticing that another sigh or a wrong look at her daughter Maria became for Helen the meaning of life. She was similar to Vanessa in height, but in appearance she looked like her father. Helen was always afraid that her parents might see it when they met. What if they realized it? But time passed, nobody guessed anything. And when the parents were gone, Helen breathed a sigh of relief no one would find out. Her secret about that second girl Helen had never even considered. The woman Maria pampered, forgave her everything. Maria grew up a spoiled brat. After high school, she didn't go anywhere. She lived on her mother's neck, hanging out in entertainment establishments. She changed men often. Helen repeatedly begged her daughter to slow down and change herself and her attitude to life. Maria only laughed. She thought that her mother is not modern, does not understand anything. And then Helen as if burst. In everything in her daughter's features and words, she began to see her late sister Vanessa. Helen never forgave or repented for what she had done, even after her death. "You're as much of a slut as your foul-mouthed mother," she once shrieked in her heart. And Maria didn't even realize she was adopted Helen. "You mean like you?" Maria asked the woman with a chuckle. "Thank God I did not give birth to you. You want to know the truth? Yes, I found you in a trash can at the train station as a puppy. You were thrown away by your own mother. And I picked you up." Maria, having learned the truth, changed her face, left the house, and didn't come back for a week. And Helen spit on it. Tired of this girl's antics, ungrateful bitch. Let her live the way she wanted. But soon everything changed. One day Helen felt sick. She went to the doctor herself, and suddenly it was discovered that Helen had a tumor in her pancreas. How could this happen? After all, Helen had annual checkups. She'd been watching her health, but the tumor was overlooked for some reason. Helen was about to undergo chemotherapy surgery, and if the operation itself was free, the subsequent treatment cost a lot of money. No, it was possible to do everything on a quota. But then you had to wait for a month, 2 or 6 months. And Helen didn't have that time. She had a small savings. Colleagues had collected some, but still not enough for a full course of chemotherapy. So Helen decided to sell her nice apartment. It had been given to her as a servant's apartment. Now the woman had privatized it and could dispose of it herself. In order to sell it, she needed Maria's consent. Helen struggled to find her daughter with some dubious acquaintances. She told Maria about her illness and that she needed to sell the apartment. Mommy cried, "Maria will get it done right. As long as it helps." The girl hugged the woman. Maria loved Helen anyway, and she loved her too. The women cried, hugging each other. "What's all this Maria sobbing for?" "I don't know, baby," Helen answered. "I guess everyone has some kind of trial in this life." Yes, she was sure that her illness was her trial, not an answer for something she had done years ago. Late one October evening, Helen sold the apartment. They moved with Maria into an old barracks. Here the woman was able to buy a place very cheaply. Now she had her own corner and money for treatment. Maria never left her mother's side. She sat by her bedside in the hospital when Helen came out of anesthesia. And then, when her mother was discharged, "Just live," Mommy whispered to Maria in tears, looking at her sleeping mother. "May I was not born, but you are my most." Helen heard her daughter's whisper, and her sick mind rejoiced. Yes, Maria, her child, no matter what. Helen, after the surgery, went through all the necessary procedures, but only the disease still wouldn't recede. She eventually had to quit the hospital. Now she lived almost entirely in this gray barracks. Helen thought back over her life. Did she regret her terrible deed? Sometimes her heart treacherously clenched when she remembered her sister, but then she stubbornly told herself Vanessa got what she deserved. Maria, a little while later, she realized that now she was the head of the family, and she would have to provide for her mother. But where could the girl get a job without education? Maria worked and in the store, and in the courier service, and in the clinic, and the company. Yes, now she was cursing herself for not going to study after school. But nothing could be fixed now. Maria decided that she would definitely get an education as soon as her mother was better. But in the meantime, she would take any job. One day, an acquaintance, Vika, offered her a job at a recruitment firm. "Everything is decent there," her friend told her. "You work as maids or nannies for rich people. They pay decent money. Plus, there are part-time jobs." She stopped talking and squinted slyly. "What kind of part-time work?" Maria asked again. "The owners are rich people. Sometimes there are single men with money. You can have an affair firm, it is not forbidden." "You mean become a saleswoman?" "Oh, Maria is dramatizing." Vika laughed. "However, as you wish," Maria, having weighed all the pros and cons, went to work in this office. She did not have anything stolen from her. Customers were decent people, and Maria was not looking for a patron among them. One day, she was sent to the house of a young professor. That's how Maria met Peter. She liked him very much, but after working only a day, she had to leave because of his unrestrained wife. Maria gave Peter a photo of herself with her phone number. What if they could make it work? Yes, Peter wasn't fabulously rich, but Maria didn't need to be. She just really liked that young man with the funny freckles on his nose. And then the office sent her to a very rich house, and there was hell waiting for Maria. The owner was an old man who decided that everything in this world could belong to him. If only he wanted it. Here he offered Maria to go out with him. The girl, remembering Peter, refused. She has changed a lot lately. If before she easily met with men, then now, after her mother's illness, dating Peter Maria more seriously, and began to respect herself, but the old man was furious at the refusal. He ordered his guards to lock the girl in one of the rooms, and then he came to see her. Maria resisted, but the master, though old, was strong and powerful. One day, Maria managed to get out through the window to the street by a sheet. It was the 3rd floor. The girl intended to escape, but all her plans were not destined to come true. The sheet broke, and Maria fell down. In the hospital, the girl lay in a coma for a week and died, and the investigation did not begin to particularly understand. And how could a respectable man suspect the owner of the mansion of anything? If he said that the housekeeper fell off the windowsill on the 3rd floor while cleaning the windows, then that's what happened. When Helen learned of her daughter's death, she was numb, so she was alone. And what should she do now? Sick with no money, nobody needs her. All her former colleagues suddenly disappeared. Helen is alone with her misfortune and a terrible secret. But even after burying Maria, she still repented and felt sorry for herself. And then she had a dream Vanessa, young and beautiful, as she remained forever. Sitting on the riverbank, Helen saw her and for some reason wanted to come over. "Hello, sister." Vanessa smiled at her. "How are you doing? Do you want to hear how I'm suffering?" Helen said angrily, "Are you suffering?" Vanessa laughed. "The real suffering is when your soul hurts, and your soul is dead. Then you are happy with me." "No, sister, I'm not truly sorry for you. You destroyed my life. Your mother died because you didn't give her the right direction in life." The girl tried to fix it herself, but she couldn't. Maria is fine now. She is by my side, and we pray together with her that our other girl will be happy and live for us and for herself. "What a girl in fear," whispered Helen. "Have you forgotten? I had 2 daughters. One you took, and the other you threw away like a puppy. But I'm grateful for that. That other one will be happy for sure. By the way, you'll meet soon. And then, sister, I'm waiting for you." Saying that, Vanessa suddenly, like a haze, stood up and walked over the river. Helen watched and couldn't say a word. Vanessa was floating on air. Suddenly, Maria appeared from somewhere. She walked over to Vanessa. They hugged and walked on together. They turned around and looked at Helen. God, how happy were their faces. They looked at Helen with a grin, but kindly. Helen then woke up in a cold sweat. What was this dream? What was it all about? And for the first time in all these years, Helen cried. No, not from pain, not from despair. It was the memories that made her heart burn. Yes, she finally realized what a monster she was and what had happened to her. A pattern. Helen realized that this dream was a kind of alert. She was going to die soon, and now death didn't seem like something to dread. It was a deliverance. And Helen also remembered Vanessa's words about a second daughter. But it seemed inconceivable that that second girl could ever find her. And then the day came. Kate stood on Helen's doorstep. Yes, the woman understood. She understood her dream. The sister had asked her to tell this other girl everything. And Helen practically confessed to Kate. The girl listened to the story, and she had goosebumps running down her back. In front of her sat the woman responsible for her mother's death, her own aunt. Kate had grown up in an orphanage because of her. She was the reason she'd never known a mother's love. And she's the one who separated the 2 sisters. And now they'll never meet again. Aren't you afraid I'll tell the police? Kate asked when Helen finished her confession. I haven't been afraid of anything for a long time. Helen whispered quietly, especially not now. I'm a medical professional myself. I realize that I have a few weeks to live at best. Tell me, do you repent for what you've done? It doesn't matter now, Helen replied, her eyes downcast. Kate couldn't bear to be in the same apartment with this horrible woman. She stood up and headed for the door. Then she turned around. Can you tell me where my sister is buried? And I also want to visit my mother and grandparents' grave, another former voice pronounced Kate Jr. here in the city cemetery. Helen answered indifferently and called out the number of the grave. My parents are buried in the town where you grew up. You won't find a cemetery that big there. Brunson Molly and Brunson Alexander. So my last name is Brunson. Suddenly, Helen's face contorted into a grimace of anger. I hate you. I hate you all. She screamed something else, became hysterical, and Kate ran out of the apartment. Being alone with this monster was unbearable for the girl. Kate already had to go to work, so she decided to go to her sister's grave another day at the daycare center. Adriana noticed that she was shifting some lost pail. Kate, you're not sick, worried a colleague. No, everything is fine. The girl even tried to smile. Just learned so much that my head is spinning. What kind of things? I can't say. It's complicated. Adriana understandably nodded in response. She wasn't used to prying. If a person is silent, it means there are reasons for it. And Kate was a little distracted in her work with the children. With the kids, they rehearsed a skit for the upcoming matinee. They did math, then took a walk on the playground. In the evening, traditionally, Kate stayed to wait for the last parent. Of course, it was Peter. Kate and Nancy sat in the group. The girl was drawing and the teacher was in her own thoughts. Kate, she finally heard the girl's voice. It turned out that Nancy had already spoken to her, but Kate was so preoccupied that she didn't hear. Yes, Nancy woke Kate up, and my pencil's broken. We'll fix it. The teacher smiled. She took the pencil and looked at the girl's drawing. Nancy drew a summer blue sky on a field of daisies. 3 people were walking along the field, 2 taller and 1 small. Who is that? Kate asked. Dad, me and you. Nancy answered shyly. I was surprised, Kate. Yes, you see, I wanted to draw Mommy, but she's in the sky now. That cloud, that's her. And you're alive, that's why you're walking next to us. Why me? Because you're nice. Kate, I don't understand why you used to come to us and have a different name. Nancy, it was an angel. Kate answered sadly. And he's up in the sky looking down on us now, too. Why did he come so that we could meet like this? You saw me and realized that we already knew each other. The girl thought for a moment, and then she smiled. So you'll always be with us now. Nothing, Kate did not answer her, only hugged the girl. Soon Peter arrived and the 3 of them walked out of the kindergarten. Do you need a ride? Peter asked shyly. I don't mind. Kate slowed down a little and added Peter. I have news. I've found out everything. Only it's a very complicated story. She nodded at Nancy. Peter realized that the story was not for children's ears. Nancy, why don't you go to our neighbor Aunt Dasha's house after preschool and play with her puppy? Nancy was delighted. Auntie had a funny little dog, and the neighbor after her daughter went away and lived alone was bored, and therefore liked to mess around with the little neighbor. Arranging with Daria, Peter took Nancy to her. Afterwards, he and Kate went to the park. They sat down on a bench, and the girl told everything she now knew. What a terrible story. Shook her head, Peter ruined her own sister because of a man, separated the sisters, and continues to live quietly. Kate, everything must be told to the police. And what? That she's sick. You have to take responsibility for your actions. That's what I wanted to do at first, but I think the aunt punished herself. She realized what she'd done. And after all these years, who's going to look into it now? I doubt our statement will be accepted, and Helen will easily recant, and I can't prove it. I should have turned on the tape recorder. When you 2 were talking, and I didn't think of that. Peter, and I want to go to Maria's grave on Saturday. Would you like to come with me? Peter said yes. It pained him to realize that the girl he had dreamed of was dead. They hadn't even talked. On Saturday afternoon, he picked up Kate, and they went to the city cemetery. On the way, they stopped at a flower stall, and the girl bought 10 red roses. There were already flowers from Peter in the back seat, but for some reason, 2 bouquets. Each of them wanted to pay tribute to the girl, who for one was only an acquaintance, and for the other a dear person. Only they didn't have to see each other during her lifetime. Maria's grave they found quite quickly. The girl found her final resting place by a young child who had been planted by someone nearby. A fresh mound of earth, a simple cross, pictures among the wreaths. Kate looked at her sister's picture and her heart ached. How many things would have been in her life if it were not for the cruelty of her aunt? There would be no orphanage, no longing, no tears. And there would have been 2 sisters who were friends, who trusted each other. None of this happened, and it will never happen again. "Hello, Maria," Kate whispered softly. "That's how we had to shine. Sleep well, darling." Tears came to her eyes. Kate looked up. Snow-white clouds floated across the sky. The wind ruffled her hair lightly. God, how painful it is to realize that there was a loved one in the world, and you didn't even know he existed. And we had to meet only here at the cemetery. Peter looked sadly at Maria's picture, a sweet, beautiful girl like a ray of sunshine. She appeared in his life and disappeared. Why? For what? And if he had not dared to call her at the very beginning of their acquaintance, maybe things would have been different. It was hard to realize that there was no going back. They stood for a while longer, put the flowers down, and walked towards the exit. But Peter suddenly stopped. "And I must still visit my wife's grave," as if justifying himself, he said. He still had a bouquet of white roses in his hands. Kate was so preoccupied that she didn't notice it at all. "Yes, of course," she agreed. "Isn't she going to wait here for you?" "No, let's go together." Jean's grave wasn't far away. The picture showed a beautiful and vibrant woman. Kate looked thoughtfully at the image. "It's a shame when someone so young and beautiful passes away," she sighed. "Yes, it is a great pity." Peter put flowers on his wife's grave and loved her very much. I don't know why she became like that. And after all, she was in her youth, a nice simple girl also loved me. Why did she go out drinking? I sometimes blame myself for that. I didn't spend enough time with my wife. All work, all work. Don't blame yourself for anything. Everything happened the way it was meant to. Kate touched Peter's arm. "Let's go," and they headed for the exit now finally. And then they sat in the car for a long time silent. For some reason they didn't want to leave. Kate interrupted the silence. "Peter, tell me about Jake. All I know is that he looked like me." "Yes, you do." Kate smiled sadly. "Jake was wonderful, my best friend and first love. He dreamed of being in the military. He was excited to join the army. I promised to wait for him. But we never met again. I don't even know exactly where he's buried. We will definitely visit his grave again." Peter gently touched Kate's hand, and it was his touch that surprised Kate a little. And then, for some reason, she was getting angry. She began to realize that she liked Peter and no longer liked Brother Jake just as a man. And Peter was looking at the girl in a different way. A few weeks went by. Kate and Retkov met at the daycare center. They had a few friendly words, and each wanted to say something else, but didn't dare. And then somehow Nancy didn't show up for kindergarten. Kate got worried, called Peter. Nancy was ill, Peter said. She had a high fever, sore throat. "Did you call a doctor?" "Yeah, there was a woman, prescribed some medicine and left. Anyway, we're getting some treatment." But so far, without much success, the fever is not going down well, and I think her throat is even redder. "Can I come over after work?" "That would be nice," Peter agreed. "Let me pick you up." It was clear from his tone that he was pleased at Kate's offer. In the evening, Kate was at Peter's apartment. Little Nancy, seeing Kate, smiled weakly. "Hello. Have you come to treat me? I'll give it a try." Kate stroked the girl's head, looked at the medicine. "I'm not a medical professional, of course, but it's strange that the doctor only prescribed a fever reducer." "Nancy seems to have a sore throat," she informed Peter. "I've worked with children for years. I know how it manifests itself. So what can we do?" "I'm a historian, not a doctor." Peter shrugged. "What the doctor said, that's what we drink." "So first, we'll try grandmother's remedies, as they call them." "Do you have any raspberry jam? Who would make it?" "I see. How did I know?" I brought it. I didn't make it myself either. Kate smiled slyly. I got it from some grandma on the row. I think it'll work. We also need salt, baking soda, and iodine. And some warm water. What's that for? It's a throat lozenge. It's a sure thing. In our orphanage, we used to use this solution to treat toothache and throat. It tastes bad, but it works. Kate approached the girl lying on the bed. Nancy, you will be treated as I say. I will obediently, whispered the little girl, and then she diligently gargled her throat with the solution Kate had made. Wrinkled her nose, but did as she should. Then Kate had hot tea with raspberry jam. After wiping it off with vodka and wrapped the baby in a sheet. Peter watched the girl's actions and wondered how she knew all this. We had a good orphanage, Kate said. Yes, there were all sorts of difficulties. But we had this nanny. So when we were sick, she always treated us like that. The teachers sometimes scolded her, but her treatment helped faster than all the pills. And my parents were supporters of only official medicine. But one day my dad got a boil and nothing worked. That's when my mom baked an onion and put the fish on us. You won't believe it, he opened up in a few hours. Peter remembered his foster parents. That's what I say, folk medicine works wonders. Soon, Nancy's fever really broke. Her throat stopped coming out of her ass. The girl took a nap, and Kate and Peter moved into the kitchen to drink tea silently, looking at each other, hesitating to say the most important things. Finally, he put the cup down. He sighed and spoke. Kate, you and I met under strange circumstances. And I think it was for a reason. You came to this town as a complete stranger. You've learned your history here too. I'm sorry you didn't get to see Maria. I didn't know her much either. I think she was a good person, no matter what. And you're good. Kate, don't think I'm thinking of Maria when I look at you. No, in the time we've known each other, I've come to realize that you become very close to me. I'm easily interested in you, Kate. Let's go out. I realize I'm older than you. Maybe you only see me as Jake's brother. But maybe in time, things will change. Kate, let's be together. Kate listened to Peter and her heart, pounding and furious with power. Her cheeks were flaming. He touched her hand and fell silent. The girl shuddered at that touch on her hand, did not remove it, raised her head and said quietly, "What about love?" "I think I love you already," almost whispered he. "I can't believe I'm hearing these words," Kate confessed, blushing even more. "Peter, I care about you too, and this has nothing to do with Jake." "Yeah, but his ring. You're still wearing it, aren't you?" Peter pointed to Kate's finger, which was adorned with a silver ring once given to Jake. Kate had once told Peter about her friend's gift. Kate smiled thoughtfully and twirled the ring. "It's just good memories of the past," she said. "And you don't mind changing it to gold?" "I don't mind, Peggy. And maybe it's time for us to switch to you. I've long wanted to suggest that to you." Peter smiled. Nancy recovered in 3 days. Soon Kate and Peter applied for a marriage license. Lucy, the landlady, when she heard about the upcoming wedding, was both happy for the girl and sad. Where else will she find such a wonderful one? But what can you do? The main thing is to make Kate happy. And then Kate called Kelly. Overwhelmed with emotion, her friend told her that she and David were going to have a baby soon. "Kate, I didn't tell you, but I made a vow to help a good man. And when he gets better, I can get pregnant." "Kate, and I did. And who is this good man?" Kate asked with a smile. "You, of course." Kate's friend laughed. "How well things are working out." "And there you will be." Kelly's words sobered Kate. She hadn't told Peter the most important thing. After that bad pregnancy, she was never going to be a mother. Yeah, he's already got a kid. But what kind of family? Without children together. I mean, Peter's obviously going to want more of the same. It turns out that Kate deceives him, not talking about her health problems. The girl agonized for days, whether to tell Peter the truth, and one evening she decided to. "Heck yeah. We probably can't be together," she said after dinner. Nancy was playing in her room. Peter was on his cell phone. Kate was doing the dishes. And then, in the middle of it, she blurted it out. He stood up in surprise. Then he sat down again in confusion, looked at his future wife. "Kate, What's wrong? I can't lie to you. You know I've been married before, but you don't know the main thing. Kate told about the miscarriage, the complications from the surgery, the fact that the doctor said unequivocally that she would never be a mother. Peter listened to her with his head down, and then he looked at Kate, took her hand in his kittenish one. We already have a baby, he said. Of course, it would be nice if we had another baby, but as it happens, we'll raise one Nancy raise and spoil. You're not really upset, are you? You're not going to leave me, now you're wiping away tears. Kate asked. You won't, he smiled. Little silly girl of mine. I love you very much. How can I leave you? You're my girl. Kate threw herself around his neck and hugged him tightly. How could she have doubted Peter? Why did she think he'd leave her? He was just nervous. Before the wedding, and it was a fun wedding, Peter and Kate's co-workers Lucy Kelly and David. 20 people in all, but it was loud. And little Nancy, who suddenly had a new mom, was cheerfully happy. No, she hadn't forgotten her own mom, but Kate was wonderful. Only the girls still couldn't understand. And why she, having appeared for the first time in their apartment, was called Maria. However, this question was forgotten in time. And 6 months later, Kate felt unwell. It seems to be signs, as in pregnancy nausea in the morning, weakness, drowsiness. But what pregnancy, when her doctor a long time ago sentenced Kate, was filled with terrible thoughts. What if it's cancer? She stretched for a week, cried nights, self-pity. Peter Nancy was afraid to go to the clinic, so as not to hear the terrible diagnosis. But then she pulled herself together and went to the tests. The therapist looked at her tests and looked at Kate with surprise. Young lady, why did you come to me? The doctor said, do you need a gynecologist? Judging by the tests, you've been there for a long time. 6 months ago, Kate muttered. But he didn't see anything then, he didn't see anything then. He'll find it now. The doctor smiled at the girl. Yes, you're pregnant. You're so high, there's no doubt about it. Pregnant? Kate gasped. How so? I was told earlier that I was infertile now. Before doesn't count. Go see a gynecologist. The doctor smiled again. Believe me, miracles do happen. And this is your case. Afterwards, the gynecologist confirmed everything. The pregnancy was 6 to 8 weeks, and everything was within normal limits. Keeping the usual, the doctor asked questions. Of course, Kate smiled happily, and when she called Peter at work and broke the news, he was so confused he couldn't lead the lecture. He dismissed the students to their mutual delight. Kate's pregnancy progressed normally. Only her belly began to increase in size quickly. The first ultrasound was another surprise. Kate is carrying twins. The expectant mother did not even know whether to rejoice or cry. After all, 2 children is a double trouble, and there is already a child in the family. How will they cope with Peter? But the husband was sure that everything will work out. 2 babies is a double joy. No, why are you surprised? Peter laughed. You were born with a sister and a sibling. Nodded. Kate smiled. And then it got twisted. Only we never got to meet her. Don't worry, our babies will have a happy destiny, and we'll do everything for that. I'm sure we will. At the due date, Kate gave birth to 3 babies, 2 girls and a boy. The doctors didn't know until the last minute that this would happen, because the ultrasound showed 2 fetuses. It's just that the 3rd baby always slipped away from the probe. The boy was the smallest, but the smallest, as it turned out, then throat flippers. That's how Kate and Peter's family became a large family overnight. Yes, there were many challenges, but Kate and her husband made it through. Little Nancy, feeling like a big sister, helped as much as she could. She could sing a song and rock the cribs. It was a happy and friendly family. When the babies were 3 months old, Kate was able to run away from home for a couple of hours for the first time. Padia let her go to a cafe to meet Kelly. Kelly also had a son growing up, a little older than the boiler babies. The young women were excited to meet. All their conversations were all about the kids. And then Kelly remembered something. Katya, there's been an incident in town. Maybe you heard an old rich guy fell out of his mansion window. They say it was an accident. And he loved young girls. The maids used to howl at him. He loved them all. Kate realized that Kelly was talking about the old man who'd been responsible for Maria's death, that he'd already gotten what he deserved. To each his own. Only from the clan you don't know, Kelly remembered. She knew the whole not fun story, didn't she? No, she shook her head. Dead by now, I guess. Let's find out. I'm sure we will. You remember where she lived, don't you? Kelly, I don't want that. She's nobody to me. And judging by her illness, she's been in the grave for a long time. That's what I want to make sure of. Anyway, Kelly persuaded Kate, and they went to see Barak. Going inside, Kate had no desire to. She asked the old ladies sitting at the doorway how Helen from apartment 23 was doing. The old ladies sighed. And when God will take her away? The doctors gave her a month to live. She's been living for almost 2 years after the operation. And if only she had lived. But she's just in pain. She screams, the ambulance comes. They give her a shot and then go back. Someone's taking care of her. Why did you ask Kate? A social worker visits her. But it's just to make sure. If she's still alive and for what? Helen, her ears are in such pain. She was such a good person. She helped children to be born. But the fate is terrible. She buried her daughter and now she can't die herself. But death would have been her salvation. And who are you and who'll you be? I think you look like Maria. Her dead daughter? No. Did it seem dry to you? Kate answered, tugged the light by the sleeve, and they left. Then they rode in a cab and were silent. It's a strange feeling, Kate said at last. I should hate her, shouldn't I, even be glad she's suffering? I'm sorry. That's because you're a normal person and your aunt is a monster. Let her take full responsibility, Kelly told her. Maybe I should have stopped by her place. Maybe we should have gotten her some groceries. Katya, is she responsible for your mom's death? Kelly exclaimed. There's no forgiveness. And you're right not to die. Let her suffer. It's the best punishment for her. The elderly cab driver from these words looked surprised at Svetlana in the mirror, then turned and said to the girls, Do you forgive me for interfering? I don't know your whole story, but believe me, sometimes the worst punishment is forgiveness. Kelly grinned back, and Kate hesitated. So I forgave her. That's why she's dying on the outside. She didn't say it out loud, of course, but the thought kept her thinking. That evening, Kate confessed to her husband that she had driven to Helen's house. She was still alive. Peter raised an eyebrow. With an illness like that, I was surprised too. But she is, Peter. Let's help her. Let's help her. Kate, are you out of your mind? How can we take her in and you, besides taking care of the kids, look after a criminal? No, I don't want that. But there are hospices where they put these patients and let them go with dignity. At least let her die with dignity. If she can't live, it's okay. And I want to do it not out of pity, but in memory of my mom, whom I didn't even know. I think my mom was a good person. Yes, she stumbled. Yes, she messed up. She was betrayed by her closest family and ruined by the closest person to her. But that's the kind of death even my mom wouldn't wish on her. Kate, you're gold. Peter stared at his wife, shocked. He agreed to find out what it took to put a person into hospice care. It turned out not to be that complicated, and it could have been done earlier by Helen's colleagues, but it was just that everyone had forgotten about it. And social services didn't want to burden themselves with extra hassle and paperwork. What's the point of all this when the end is already known? Helen was moved from Barak to a hospice. She had been there for a week. When Kate came to see her, the young woman did not even recognize her. Helen had been sick and ill the first time they met. And now Kate was practically a mummy, only a living Maria. Helen suddenly opened her eyes, seeing the visitors. And oh, Kate, remember I came to see you. You, Helen, you coughed. What did you come for? Are you happy to look at me? No, I came to tell you that I'm letting you go. Are you a priest or what? Where are you letting me go? To my mom's. Tell her I love her, even though I've never seen her. And tell her she has 2 granddaughters and a grandson and an older granddaughter. And I will make sure my children never become enemies. And Maria say I will live for the 2 of us? Saying this, Kate turned away to the window, barely holding back tears behind her back. Some rolling was heard. That was Helen laughing. So you're sure I'm going to die soon? I heard my aunt's voice. Will you live as long as you're supposed to? Kate replied and walked away. Not to say that she was relieved after this meeting, but she was just drawn to talk to Helen. And that night Helen died. Kate realized it even before the morning call from the hospice. She dreamed of a young, beautiful girl, short, slender. She was laughing, waving to someone. Then suddenly Maria was next to her, and the two of them were calling someone to her. Suddenly a third figure appeared out of the darkness, a woman old with goblins. She approached the two. They were silent for a second. Then suddenly they embraced, she was taken by the hands, and they walked off into the mist. Peter had taken all the trouble to bury Helen. Yes, he was against it. Let the state bury her. I mean, who was Kate on the deed? She's nobody. And given her past, she should be consigned to oblivion. But Kate insisted on doing it humanely. They're human beings. It's been a few more years. Peter by this time had left the institute and went into business. He opened a travel agency, which was in demand among the population. Nancy had already gone to school at the Children's and Youth Sports School, and Jake went to kindergarten. Kate also went to work only in another group, so that her kids, as well as the others, got used to the order in the kindergarten. At first, the kids thought that Mom was not in the group with them. Then they got used to it. Kate was quite happy. She has a family, children, a favorite husband, an interesting job. What else is there to live for? One day she was coming home in the evening and decided to walk. Peter had picked up the kids from daycare early. Now they were all at home waiting for her. I think they even cooked dinner together. That, at least, was what Peter had told her on the phone. And Kate just walked through the park and enjoyed the fall nature. It was September. Softly rustling leaves underfoot through the golden branches of birch trees shone the rays of the setting sun. A light breeze ruffled my hair. Once in a while Kate flew at us, and she wrinkled her nose and smiled funny. And then the cell phone rang. Some unfamiliar number. The young woman hesitantly answered it. In the receiver she heard a man's voice, remotely reminding her of someone. Kate, I recognize you. I could barely find your number. Do you have any idea what a roundabout way this is? Unknown contact. So tell me about it, girl. How you doing? I'm good. Who's that? She answered calmly. Who? Didn't you recognize your beloved husband? It's me, Frank. Kate, I'm so glad to hear from you. For so many years, I thought you were still hesitant to call Kate. I was wrong then. I'm sorry. Where do you live now? According to the number, somewhere in Detriet. Where are you? I'll come over, wherever you say. Why would you come? Kate grinned. Why? But we've had so much together. Kate, I can't forget you. Yeah, neither can the debt. What debt? The money for the room. Well, Kate, we'll discuss it, of course. Yes, I did wrong then. But it was Cindy, the bastard, who confused me. I fell for her persuasion. I lied to you, I'm sorry. But I broke up with her a long time ago. Kate, don't worry, I've got a lot of money now. I'll pay you back for that room. I don't want anything from you, and I don't want to see you. I've had a different life for a long time. Forget about me. Kate, you're wrong. You can't do this. We loved each other in the past, so Kate cut off all communication. And then she blocked this unknown number. Why was he calling? Why was he calling? Kate didn't understand, but it was so unimportant to her that she soon forgot about the call. And then there was a report on TV about a criminal organization. All the organizers were caught at once, but the main one went into hiding. They searched the country for almost a month and detained him at Krasnoyarsk Airport. The report showed the face of this criminal in close-up, and Kate was surprised to recognize Frank in him. It became clear why he called her. He wanted her to hide him. A naive, stupid man. He thought Kate was still in pain for him. When Kate told Peter all this, he jokingly remarked that his wife's fate could be the subject of a movie. Why do we need a movie? Everything is much more interesting in life. Kate echoed his sentiments. You don't say, my love. Peter hugged his wife, and they stood looking out the window. While the first fluffy snow was falling outside the window, hiding the grayness and dirt, soon it would be winter with its best frosts and winds. and then will come the exuberant spring. A hot summer will come, which will be replaced by a golden fall. And so it has always been and will always be in nature. And man is just a grain of sand in 1,000,000 other events and phenomena. But the main thing is to live this small life so that your descendants remember you with warmth and pride, and that they simply live humanly in harmony without hatred and anger.